So as you guys know, I am always brainstorming ideas, and it was no different this time last year, November last year in 2019. Myself and the team were brainstorming what we were going to bring into 2020. 2020 had a really cool ring about it, and we were definitely getting ready to produce some new content for you, to create some events and workshops. We were talking about an app, we were talking about podcasts, we were talking about lots of different things. And then 2020 happened, and like all of you, plans didn't quite go to plan, and that's totally okay. I have been really proud of everything that we have achieved in this year of 2020. But one of the things that I think I am proudest of is the fact that this year we launched a podcast. So I say we because it's myself and Alina. We don't have some fancy tech team. We haven't had the capacity to record at a studio, which was probably something I really wanted to do. But it's been us, and we've learnt on the fly. And anyone that follows us on Insta will see that I've turned one of the spare wardrobes in our house into a studio. We've put some soundproofing in there, and that's where I record, inside a cupboard. And it's been a really interesting time of learning and whatever else. But what's really interesting as well is that the purpose of this podcast was always about passion, and it was always about sharing stories and celebrating women. Now, anyone that's listened to the podcast, which is called She Inspires Me, would know that if you've listened to the pilot episode, you'll know that She Inspires Me was originally launched as a Facebook passion project back in 2017. You'll hear my story of why it had started in the first place and how that all came about. Fast forward to 2020, around April, I received a message from a dear friend, Beck Barry, who will be a guest soon. We are looking to record her episode soon. But Beck reached out to me and she was like, people need some good stories right now, and I think She Inspires Me could be something else. And we got brainstorming, and we were like, well, maybe a podcast. And it's now November. We've probably done, I think when you are watching this, we might have released maybe 13 or 14 episodes. We've definitely recorded that many. And it's been pretty incredible. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to just recap the first 10 episodes and to share with you a little bit from each of them. And I guess the things that really stood out to me and the things that I remembered the most from each of my interviews with our incredible, inspirational guests that we've had. So our first episode was with Alina Gilma. Now, anyone that knows me knows that Gilma is my maiden name, and so Alina is my niece, and she is pretty impressive. And I probably sound really biased, but she is just incredibly impressive. So when we had our interview, the main reason why I wanted her to be my first guest is because she was the first person I interviewed for the written format of She Inspires Me back in 2017. So one of the things that really kind of stood out for me is something that Alina told me during our interview, and she is quoted to have said, "If you're trying to drive towards something, just do it. Don't let anyone stop you from doing it." And I was just blown away at the wisdom and the determination of this young woman. So what a great way to kick off the series of She Inspires Me podcast. And then we jumped into episode 2 with Katherine Cookie Norman. Now, Katherine is a dear friend of mine. I've known her for quite some time from my previous life in the events industry, and she is such a ball of energy and positivity. She has this really contagious laugh that I love, and I also interviewed her back in 2017 when She Inspires Me was a more blog style format. And at the time, we talked a lot about marriage equality and what was going on back in Australia back then. And so it was amazing to touch base with her again, recap everything that's happened in the last 3 years. And that was pretty hard to do. It's probably one of our longer podcast episodes. But one of the things that Cookie encourages everyone to do is to just constantly be on this quest of learning every day. And she says to me, I think that dialogue, that open, respectful debate and dialogue is really important. I think it's really important that people feel safe enough to ask questions. And wow, in this year of 2020 where we have discussed so many things and the world is an unusual place more than ever, being able to have respectful debate and respectful questions and respectful conversations, I think is 100% what we should be discussing. So I highly recommend that you check out that episode. Episode 3 was with Dawkis Mafikela. And so I met Dawkis probably about this time last year, October last year. And one of the things that really stood out for me personally is how much she embraced her African roots and how much she was bringing that into her day-to-day life here in Australia. So it kind of really opened up a door for me to start paving the way of exploring my African roots, being from Mauritius, and making a point to bring that into my household. So it's probably been what's affected me most personally. But in addition to that, in addition to the work that Dawkis does in the African community here in Australia, she also is working really hard to support women and has recently started working in the space of family violence. And so she shared with us that it's not even about offering a solution. It's so we can start a conversation in a normal space. Right now, people are doing a lot of work, but there's a stigma attached to talking about family violence. And as someone that's experienced some of that in the past, I very much agree there. It can be a really difficult conversation and there's definitely lots of work to be done in that space. So in episode 4, I interviewed my dear friend Tash Klewert, and Tash's episode is our most downloaded episode. We had a giggle a few weeks after the episode was released as she was trying to share it with someone and she couldn't get it to work, and I was like, you've broken the internet. But it's been such a pleasure to share her story because Tash is just a dynamo. She's a fearless leader. She leads with her heart and she is a great advocate for women who are in that corporate space working really hard to lead big teams. But one of the things that I really loved about the interview with Tash is when she really showed us the human side of being a leader. And she said, it doesn't matter how I'm feeling, and even if I have to talk through tears, these people deserve my honesty. Now that specific sentence was said in a really vulnerable state, and you'll have to check out the episode to hear what this year has been like for Tash. It's been incredibly challenging, but she's doing all the right things because, as I said, the most downloaded episode because she inspires me. Episode 5 with Liz Volpe. So I have Liz to thank for my growth and experiences in Cambodia. So Liz is the founder of Project NZ. She is the woman that has created the opportunities that I've had to travel there twice. And we talk often about kids and the differences between being here in Australia and the kids in Cambodia and the impact they've had on our lives, but hopefully the impact that we have had on theirs. And she shared with us the biggest thing that stands out is the absolute hunger to really take something and run with it. These children in Cambodia don't have any other opportunities, so you put one in front of them and they will do whatever it takes to succeed and to get it. And that's so true when I think about the children and the teenagers and the young adults in Cambodia that I've met. They are hungry and they are so determined, and it's such a pleasure to pass on our entrepreneurial skills and to give them those opportunities. So episode 6 was with Dr. Lisa Gadd. I don't often call her Dr. Lisa Gadd. She's one of my very best friends, and it sounds really formal when I call her that. But man, this woman is fearless. 2020 has been an incredibly challenging year for her. I know personally as a business owner, but when I hear her story and when we share it with you in this interview, it is amazing to hear what she has overcome. And she's a woman of very direct words, and one of the things that she shared with me is if we can impact just one person, then we've done a good job. And it's so true. One of the things that I have found to be the most important about creating this podcast and working through this process so I can share these stories with you is that it is about impact. It's about the connections that we make and the stories that we share and the words that have power, and that's really shown itself in the feedback that I've had from all of you regarding the podcast, which is amazing. So episode 7, it's crazy that we're already up after episode 7 in my recap, was with Edinburgh. So I've known Edinburgh for a really long time. She was one of my first employees and first team members when I first moved to Melbourne a very long time ago, in a whole nother lifetime of work that I used to do. And one of the things that I really have to thank Edinburgh for, during this episode and within this process of having this interview with her, is that she sparked something in me that some of you may have seen lately, is that after 20 years, I've now started painting again and I've started creating again, and I've really embraced that part of my life and my personality. And it was talking to Edinburgh and hearing that balance of perfectionism and creativity that I've always really struggled with. When she articulated that so well, it was really, it very much was a tipping point for me. And we've spoken quite a lot since the interview, where we've had lots of giggles about just how we can hide those parts of ourselves and not be creative, and it's been really lovely. So one of the things about this balance of perfectionism and creativity that I really loved was when Edinburgh described the process for her, and she said that I research colour theories and go into depth so everything makes sense. Nothing is ever placed there for no reason, and that's where the perfectionism comes in. And I can really relate to that. I can be a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to certain things, but I think for me it's about the value that you bring and what you place and where, and that's really important. Episode 8 was with Shavita Kotak. So we hear this story, I've heard this story quite often, where the corporate person wants to escape, run away to the circus, run away to just be somewhere else. And in Shavita's case, run away to focus on a life full, of wellness and a holistic approach and looking after herself. And she did it. She escaped the corporate world and now works in this space of wellness and well-being. And it was so lovely to hear that part of her journey and to hear how that's impacted her and how she's been able to share those learnings with others. And she spoke so well when she shared with us, I'm putting myself out there as a vulnerable soul, and I'm sharing with other vulnerable souls that want to share and to be connected in some way when we were so disconnected. And that was when she was sharing with us, or sharing with me and listeners about this time of COVID and shifting from yoga classes face to face and bringing that online and just showing up, because that's what she needed to do. Episode 9 was with Tennille Stollenkamp. Now, I get a bit fangirl in this episode. I love Tennille. She's a badass, and she's cool, and she's humble, and she's just all the things that you would want in someone to admire. But man, she's uber talented, and I use the word uber because she used to work for Uber, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, ridiculously talented, singer, writer, actor, knows her way around the corporate scene, works with entrepreneurs. She kills it. But the thing that I love about Tennille is her heart and soul. And it shines right the way through this entire episode because for her it's about passion and people and human connection, and all that other stuff is great, but she's not out for the fame. She's out for the real deep passion, connection stuff, and I thought that was fantastic. So she shares, when we were talking about who inspires her, she shared with me, I'm continually inspired by the people who are the overcomers more than the achievers, the people who express themselves or take the time to follow their passion, express what they are feeling. It's not about the success or the achievement, it's about the fact that we all have this one short life and they want to get the most out of it. And wow, what a great way. Like, that was towards the end of the episode, and what a statement to end the episode on. Now, episode number 10, I was pretty excited when we hit number 10, was with Deb Elliott. Now, Deb is based here in Victoria. She is a retiree, but man, there is no stopping Deb. She is such a straight shooter. I was really delighted to speak to her because she was like, nah, I don't like that, so I just do it. And if it doesn't work, I paint over it. And I was like, man, that's exactly what I want to be like when I'm retired. Just getting on with it and doing what I want to do and giving back to the community. And so Deb shares her story of a community project that kind of really grew legs and is something that she got to do during this time of COVID. And one thing that really moved her was the impact that it had on others. And so she said, people said, thank you, you've given me something to do and a sense of purpose during this time, which is also what it gave me. Whew, amazing. Just that connection into community and that real human spirit that I've been talking about probably for most of this video. So that's the first 10 episodes. As I said, we have more that have been released since then. I thought this video is going to be really long if I try to recap all of them. So we might do another episode 11 to 20 or something like that in the future. But if you have not had the opportunity to get these episodes into your ears, I highly recommend that you do. And I'm really biased because they're our podcast and She Inspires Me is ours. But it's something that was created for all of you. It was something that was created to share the stories of these women. This podcast isn't about me. It's not about organizing stuff. It's not about mental load and all of that stuff we normally talk about. This is about incredible women doing incredible work in their everyday lives and an opportunity for us to share those stories with you. So if you haven't already, head on over to your podcast app, whichever one you use, search for She Inspires Me, subscribe. If you are a listener, please leave us a review. It's the best way of us sharing our stories with others, or flick it to a friend on a text and say, hey, check out this episode or check out this podcast or whatever else. I would really appreciate that. We've got some links here that you can check out using different types of podcast apps. And if you are a listener, and I know there are some of you out there who have listened to every single episode, thank you. We have much more coming for you, and I really appreciate you being a part of this community.